Hello, everyone. The TTS League for Marvel Crisis Protocol is in its last weeks for Season 14. I am interviewing the semi-finalists to find out a little more about the players that have made it this far. Joining me today is Kurtis. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing great. We're doing this interview right after I just won my top eight game, so I'm still feeling good, and I feel a little more awake than when we started this morning. So yeah, doing well.
That's really great. Yeah, that adrenaline dump after your probably first couple rolls in the game, maybe because you started rolling pretty well early on, and it helped stay that way for the majority of the game. So that must have felt good. Like, how did you feel in the moment in that game?
Well, when all my defense rolls felt like they were rolling four successes, and all my attacks were rolling like 5 to 8, yeah, it went pretty well. So
Yeah.
felt good about that. That
No,
uh, that wasn't quite expected, but it worked out okay for me.
yeah. You take those. We take those. All right.
Oh,
So anyway, about the league itself, played now in 5 seasons. This is
yep.
the fifth. How do you feel about season 14 as a whole?
I've really enjoyed it so far. Yeah, I've had a lot of good opponents. I think I've run into a few different matchups and gotten to play some different stuff. So yeah, overall I think it's gone well and I've enjoyed it. And it's a been a pretty good field for the top four here. So gonna be a
Nice.
challenge, but yeah, it's gone well, Lucas. It's gone well.
Good. Yeah, better than the previous seasons, right? So
Yeah, I this is the longest I've been in cuts, which is nice. I feel like I keep showing up in cuts and then losing fairly early, so this has been a nice change so far.
well, you've been playing Hellfire for the last while. Of course, anyone listening isn't familiar, Kurtis is the number one ranked Hellfire player in the world. So, what do you like about them? I know you do actually comment a lot on the fan servers and provide a lot of advice for the affiliation, but if you could like summarize a couple of things here that you like about them.
Yeah, I mean it's I've always played power leaderships in this game. I started out with A Force and I got into Hellfire as a dual affiliation for She-Hulk when she wasn't as good, which turns out is almost every situation. Hellfire just is better. So over time, that duel just evolved into me playing Hellfire. Maybe that'll change one day, but yeah, for now, I think I started playing it. I started playing characters like Black Cat and Okoye, who I had already played in A Force a lot, and so it was, it felt like home very quickly. What I love about Hellfire, though, is you can get a lot of tempo right away. A lot of characters' effects get online to be able to do steals and throws and bodyguards and things like that. And then the team also pivots quite nicely to, a very tanky damage dealing team that can do it through a lot of like big terrain and character throws and some decent attacks. And then I think obviously it plays mid range well. So the list itself, I mean, we all know Hellfire's good. I think the other part that's interesting is it's just got all the flexibility on list building. And so I think it really rewards the iteration over time on the list to really fine tune it. There's a lot of flexibility in what kind of squads you can bring and the different situations it can handle and the models that are good into different matchups or crises. So it's the toolbox aspect as well. I think that's really exciting for me. And yeah, I've been on it I
Very
guess
cool.
almost over a year now, right? Something like that.
I mean, you tell me.
Yeah.
The All right. So, well, you did have to lock your rosters for this season, and was there any hemming and hawing? Were there any characters that almost made it, or any characters that barely made it in? What were your thoughts on having to lock it in?
I felt really good about it. I mean, this roster's been tuning for a while. The biggest change I made, I think, for cuts has been running the double two threats and only two three threat characters. I was a little I was a little nervous about that because I wasn't sure, I wasn't totally sure that that was the best play, but I've been experimenting with a lot of double two threat lineups, and Zemo and Black Cat are so good that they can kind of handle anything. And it's opened up the ability to have some splash 4 threat picks that have also been pretty valuable. So that was really the only thing. Other than that, the tactics cards and the scenarios have been pretty locked in for a while.
Nice, very cool. You're in the top four now. You've had to play how many matches? Three so far, and now you had the 6 games in the Swiss bracket. Were there any opponents or matches that stick out in your mind when you look back at how, all the games you've played so far?
Yeah, you know what? I had a really good, I think it was against Jacob Deaton in round 4. It was a Hellfire versus Webs match, and I feel like there was a time where I was only playing I was only playing against Web Warriors.
Right.
And it wasn't like the biggest barn burner, but it was one of those things. I think it was a 1 point game that really could have gone either way. Yeah, it was round 4. And then I feel like I had a few other kind of interesting games, like some that went very scenario heavy, and then some that were like down the middle demons, and I got to play this Ultron team. Yeah, overall, like I think that's the fun part of the list is it can feel very different that the teams that get brought on like the central just stand there and punch each other brawls as well as like the wide scenario games. And then I got a really good mix of that.
Right. Well, looking ahead here, there's 3 players, and you're going to need to get through 2 of them. What are your thoughts on the remaining players left in the event?
Well, I think 3 of them are from the central bracket.
Yourself
So,
included, yes.
yeah. So that's pretty cool. Schmidt is a good friend of mine. We were squad goals teammates together. He just beat me in a really fun game in the lunch meet tournament final. So, he's always a little scary. I know his convocation roster's taken a few bumps with the latest changes, but yeah, he's always a tough opponent to play. And then Sooner as well. I don't think we've played in a tournament, but we've played a bunch of pickup games together, and he's always been good to play. And Geisman and I again have we've played a few pickup games together as well. So they're usually pretty back and forth, and I think like our our win rates are fairly equal into all of them. So I mean they're all very good. That's why they're in the top 4, and they've had a ton of practice with their lists as well. So I think everybody's was feeling pretty fine tuned, other than maybe changing up
Right.
everything. But it's always good to play people who know their rosters very well and have lots of practice.
Yeah, it is. It is an entirely different game when you're playing someone who is somewhat familiar or has like maybe 10 reps with their list or 15 reps, but then you have all 3 of these players that you're going to be up against, and including yourself as well. I'll have 50 plus games easy with each of the affiliations that they've been playing so far in the event, which is, yeah, so it clearly shows that the grind, the rep practices and reps and grinding can translate to success. So, all right. Anyway, have you taken any additional steps to prepare yourself for the upcoming matches compared to maybe the games you were playing in Swiss?
No, I think like I generally don't simulate much. I think through I generally like to think through my opponent's roster though, and think about the matchups that I want to get character wise, and some of the characters that I think will be like really strong into my opponent's team, and some of the characters that I think will be weaker based on what they're bringing. So Hellfire's got so many good options and strong characters that I'm spoiled for choice when it comes to it. But there's certain matchups where some of those more specialized picks will be really strong, or there's matchups where like Baron Zemo over Black Cat or Black Cat over Baron Zemo I think will be a better choice, or I may bring in Logan or Bishop as a 4 threat rather than Bill or Rhino, or look to get Ultron in because I think he'll do well in a lot of scenarios. Those are the kind of things I think a lot about, and then I have I have the most flexibility in the game building squads around that. So it's
Yeah.
like I think that approach works well and doesn't cause me to overthink things. Just get in the flow of the game and go from there.
I can see that. I have a couple of questions about your roster here. If you could, this is a small little game we can play, and it's like rank your roster or tier list your roster here. So you're who you have to
Okay.
drop one character off of your roster at a time. So who's the 10th character that if you had to sacrifice would have to go?
Hmm. The 10th character would be Bishop.
All right, who next? Who has to give who's the next character voted off the island?
Oh man. So in that theme, Bishop is a specialist 4 threat. So my other specialist 4 threat would be Logan. So Logan would be gone next.
All right. You got 8 left.
And then from there, I think Ultron would actually be the next one. He's like my specialist attrition plan, but certainly not an every game character. So Ultron goes next.
All right, you're left with 7 characters.
Uh, then I got to cut a 2 threat. So it's probably Toad next. And
Okay.
then after Toad, I think Okoye then is the next most replaceable. I think she's I could play some different 2 threat options. So we're still in the realm of replaceable there.
Okay, so now just for the listeners to recap here, I'm going to just read through. We have Emma, Rhino, Bill, and then we have Zemo and Kat. These are the remaining 5. Who's got to go?
I think Black Cat next. She's incredibly good. Black Cat, though, in my whole squad goals run up, I didn't have her for the team event, so I replaced her with Pyro and Pyrotechnics. You can also just put Miles in that role as well. And so yeah, I think I would take her out next because she's not as replaceable, or she's more replaceable. The next then is probably Baron Zemo, but we're really coming down to it. I mean, Zemo is just so crazy in Hellfire with how good he can take that extra power just to get going, and he just does so much with his mobility and movement. He's really, I think, the piece that lets me only play 2 3 threats, because I can think of very few situations in the game where Zemo is bad, and you know
Yeah.
only another few that he's not actively amazing. Like, he stands in the middle of my bunker giving everyone rerolls on attrition scenarios. He is so mobile that he can get anywhere on the board on the wide scenario spreads, and really good at chasing like weak back point sitters or extract holders. And on pay to flips, like when he has a bunch of power and can just, charge onto points, attack a few times and flip things. I mean, he's always good. And I think that lets me not have to run any other threes other than Black Cat. So yeah, he's just amazing.
Well, down to 3.
So my next cut would be Rhino. Rhino is incredible and is like the reason I win games in scenario. The tempo he gives, or his ability to rotate or move, is just insane. He synergizes incredibly with the leadership, being able to heal with damage reduction and 7 health. And also just, I mean, everyone knows how good Rhino is, but any Rhino that starts every round with 3 power basically is an even better version.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I think on scenario setups, the Hellfire Rhino functions like a generic 5 threat. He's just that good.
So Bill is obviously the last cut you could make before you'd have, of course, Emma, who makes the affiliation even a thing.
Yeah, I mean, Bill is like never bad. I cannot think of a scenario where Bill is bad.
In
He's
in Hellfire, in Hellfire is what you're saying,
in
right?
Hellfire, yeah, like he's the tanky. So he's a tanky character that can go last, reduce a bunch of damage to 0, and then healing it is even crazier. And he can displace anything and throw anything other than size 5. So he's already amazing on basically any scenario setup where he can double move throw or get attacks off, any central setup where he's like your tanky anchor that, has weirdly good attacks sometimes. And then on pay to flips, like he still generates a couple power every turn, so it's maybe not his best spot, but he's fine. And even into webs, like it's not his best matchup, but again, he's like double moving and eising a far extract or like
Yeah.
just throwing a bunch of big terrain into them. So he's I don't know if I'd quite go as far as saying Bill makes the roster work, but when you have characters like Beta Ray Bill and Baron Zemo who are who have the ability to be played on any setup, it lets me bring more specialist characters so I can be stronger in the different setups versus just call it good on average. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Nice.
how I think about the roster.
Very cool. The Are there any characters that are coming out soon that get you excited to put in your list?
Yeah, I think Lady Sif is like a really good shout for. She'll probably replace Logan now that exceptional healing has been rotated out. So she, in Hellfire, she brings a lot of the same things as Zemo, where she can kind of play a lot of different setups and being able to get the extra power to like charge and swordsman right away is a huge difference between, just being able to charge for how much power she can generate and get going the rest of the game. And then, you know, at squad goals for that whole run up, I didn't have Ultron. And so Thanos was like my central plan. And Lady Sif she just seems like she'll be really good with Thanos as well. So I could see I could see her coming in immediately and, maybe replacing Ultron with Thanos and kind of keeping the rest of the roster very similar. In terms of other new models, I think with the way that the tactics cards have changed and the fact that Hellfire doesn't take up a lot and a lot of the characters I bring don't have that, I could see I could see some of the new Asgard characters coming in and turning into a dual affiliation, like maybe a Hellfire Asgard type plan. I'm really keen to try Jane, whether it's through some type of Jane leadership with Sif and Bill and Zemo. That seems really strong. Could also do maybe go back to A Force if Jane is A Force affiliated and run some of that kind of stuff. So we'll see. But yeah, that box will definitely be purchased. Let's put it that way.
Right, very cool. Well, we're gonna bring it back to competitive MCP real quick here. You've been playing this game competitively both online and in real life events over the last couple years or so. So I'm just gonna rattle off a few things for any viewers who are not familiar with Kurtis's success. And he has won 4 lunch meet events, which is he's tied for the most event wins. There's been 21 of them now, and they are online monthlies. And a lot of really strong players enter these events, and so they are often seen as more competitive than what you would expect to see in person because they draw a lot of the most competitive players in each month. So those are impressive wins. We have 5 out of 5 elimination bracket qualifiers in the league. You have played in 5 seasons and you have made it into the elimination brackets every single time, which is pretty crazy. In squad goals, that was the event held by the Taco Truck in May. You were only one of 3 players that ended the event undefeated. And recently, you had a 20 game win streak. So, looking back at these successes and overall just your experience in the competitive community, are there any memories or things that come to the top of your mind when you think about this game?
Hmm. I think the I think the most fun experience was probably second win down in Chicago.
Oh, I forgot to mention
Uh,
that you were the runner up at Second Wind.
yeah, yeah, that was just a really fun event and the first time. Yeah, I think it was the first time I had made it down to the States for a tournament. It was it was the same week as a work event that I was down in Chicago for, so that worked out incredibly well. And then squad goals to follow that up and getting to meet even more people, and just that team event was so fun to prepare for and get ready for and then go do. I was really sad your team beat us, but that's okay. It was a lot of fun. Um,
Yeah, that was a
you
really
know,
good game we had too. It was fairly intense. I enjoyed it.
yeah. I mean, for me, like the online events, I like winning, and it feels really good, but I think it's the in-person stuff that is the most fun for me. Just the reality with three young kids and living pretty far away from a local game store that plays MCP. The put to kids to bed and then play online setup is how I get most of my games in. But when I can get in person and meet a bunch of people in the community and play, that's definitely the most fun and the highlights for me.
Yeah, I that's really cool. I agree that the in-person things are, as someone who has only experienced going to a Adepticon and then Squad Goals are like the two big things I've been to, and Second Wind I was there too. It's hard to even describe if you've never been, like the energetic. It's just there's so much energy there. Going to the convention is just like a surreal experience for me, and yeah, so anyone who hasn't been yet, it's definitely something to try out. Is there anything you're looking at going to maybe in 2025?
That's a good question. I would really love to go to WTC next year. It didn't work out. I had a work event the weekend of WTC in Second Wind this year, which was a real pain. So I think that the events on my mind, like I would go back to squad goals anytime. Second Wind as well, but I'd love to do a WTC with Canada, and I'd love to make it out to an LVO as well. I think one of those trips, if my wife and I could go to Vegas for a week and we could get someone to watch the kids and all that, I think that would be a really cool experience. But for now, Chicago's only a few hour flight. Other than that, I work a bit traveling to the US, so any chance I can get to maybe work on a Thursday, Friday, and sneak an event in over the weekend, I will always be looking for those opportunities.
Yeah, very, very cool. I had questions from your previous teammate, Schmid.
Oh no.
He So he, of course, was one of your squad goals partners, and he is also in the top four. Quite the story here that it could be shaping up if you end up having to play him. Um,
Yeah.
but so the questions I have from Schmid are the first one is, what's the biggest influence Schmid has had on your play?
Gosh. Oh, now I have to say something nice about him, don't I?
Potentially.
Schmid has made me. He's made me a more aggressive scenario player in more circumstances than I would have before. So I think he's really the way he plays is he tries to, get in the fight and make games very chaotic, and he's not afraid to have characters days if it means, his positioning is really strong and he can counterattack and stuff, and he just does a really good job at that. So I think he was a big influence on Baron Zemo coming into my list and realizing that, having a character that could double move and throw, or, double move or move and steal is good. But if I can go kill a back point sitter who's holding an extract, like, a Wong or a Storm or characters like that, I can win the secure and get the point and, do it in a different way. So I think he's brought he's really helped me add that to my game, and he was also a big proponent of Ultron earlier and would always share with me like a million ridiculous Ultron plays that he thought up. And I think Hellfire has some really funny interactions with the leadership and exploding grunts and all that kind of stuff. So definitely, like, in my list, the Baron Zemo and the Ultron, and just that more aggressive play style in selective bursts, or into specific models, I think has been his influence on me.
Very cool. That kind of ties into the another question. that he had, and it said, "What is your biggest evolution as a player over the last year?"
Yeah, I mean, I think I pay more attention to not thinking about scenario and attrition as these like two separate camps. I think the Hellfire list overall, the way it started out was you bring tanky characters with control effects, and like Lizard was kind of the poster child for that. Then it evolved for me more. I think I was sort of the one who brought Black Cat in her pre-nerf state to the, get the power to move steel move with Black Cat and Rhino and then huddle around Okoye. Like that was a very A-Force play style I used to have. So I think that the third evolution of it was in bringing in characters like Ultron and Zemo, was just, maybe a more dynamic style in certain matchups where I would focus on like who are the characters I need to control, who are the characters I want no part of and just need to take from them and get away, and who are the characters that are weak enough that I can go and kill them and, be able to activate last and leverage my control effects and scoring effects better. So it was like a thinking really hard about the matchups that I have on the table and how I want to deal with each of my opponent's models, has probably been the biggest evolution over the last few months.
Very cool. Okay, well, let's. I have a few hobby questions for you here. And so, when did you get into the hobby MCP? And were there any previous tabletop games that you had played before that?
Yeah, this was my first tabletop war game, or miniature game. I started, my brother-in-law and I used to have a local game night. So we would meet every Wednesday and we'd play board games while our wives would watch The Bachelorette. And it was like we would just switch houses and it worked well because we all had kids that were asleep. So, we could do that and still stick around. So that was fun. We were playing some different board games and he had Crisis Protocol. So we started playing that for probably, I don't know, we played it for about 8 months before I ever played anybody else and
That's
started
crazy.
going to tournaments and stuff. So, yeah, I'm glad we got bored of the Mythic Battle board game and decided to pick up Crisis Protocol for our weekly night.
Nice, very cool. Actually, you used to play other games competitively before too, right? I remember you telling me about a certain board game. So why don't you give
Oh
us more details
gosh.
on that?
Yeah, back in high no, back in high school and university, I played the board game Blockus competitively, um, which is so long ago. I played that for about 4 years, and I think like our team won the Canadian championships, and I was ranked like third in the world at one point. And then Mattel bought the game and shut down the online website, and I literally never played again. So that was interesting. But yeah, that's about it for competitive gaming experience for me.
What identified you in the Blockus community? Was there any sort of specific things that's made you stand out over other players?
Yeah, I was known for I had an opening named after me, so that was fun. That was like I kind of became known for it. It was a weird like it didn't seem very good. It was like a really improper positioning one, but you could get trapped by the it's hard to explain. You could basically get trapped by it though and make really bad decisions that look good. So maybe that's it's a bit how I play Crisis Protocol with like a Okoye and bodyguards effects and stuff. It's like just try to make it so that my opponent runs out of good moves or they kind of get tangled in a web. I think that's always how I've enjoyed playing this game. So it's probably carried over the last decade.
That's very cool. So you don't have a local game store, or how far away is your local game store?
Well, the most local that has kind of the bigger competitive events is a couple hours away from me. It's the one we've met at a few times. So other than that, there's 45 minutes away. There's a bit of an MCP community, but I think they're more into like Shatterpoint and some other games. So yeah,
Yeah.
it takes local game nights. Like again, they're just not great for where I'm at in life, but getting away on a few Saturdays to go out for a tournament for the day or making a trip out of it down to the States has been a lot of fun, and I don't seem to lose too much switching from online to in person, so that's been fortunate.
Also, having to see look your opponents in the eye when you beat them, how does that feel?
Gosh. Yeah, I guess I'm probably nicer in person. I don't know. Yeah, I just find I think the biggest like mental tax in this game, for especially for new players, is still just like constantly having to learn what characters do. And so, you get to a point where you've like sort of memorized every card, or at least have you at least generally know what opposing models are going to do. And, you're not too worried about like what's their mystic defense, but you kind of know what models do in that. So I think that's the stuff in person that you can just focus on playing the game and not about like, oh, what does that character do? Like, do I have to stare across the table and read your card 4 times? But yeah, I think that translates well.
Yeah, I agree. I think that game knowledge is something that can help level up your game, especially if you're relatively new.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's true. I mean, if I want to learn what a new model does, nothing wrong with throwing them in a list with Emma and going out and trying to figure it out.
yeah, that's right. It might skew your perception though if you ever end up not playing Hellfire. That's wow, this character is crap when I only get one power a turn.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, seriously. It happens all the time. Like, why is nobody playing this character? It's the most broken thing in the game. And then you're like, oh, what do you mean Bill starts a turn on 2 power and can't throw? Like, this is dumb.
All right. Well, anyway, that's it for my questions. Were there any other final thoughts that you had to share?
No, just want to say congratulations to the other 3 people in the top four, and I'm looking forward to a couple games and trying to figure out in the next 10 hours what I'm gonna do to my roster with all these changes. So um, it'll be a good day and hopefully a good next few weeks.
All right, man. Well, congrats on making it this far, and good luck in your next one or two games.
Yes, thank you, sir.